At 4:03 in the morning, federal agents executed simultaneous operations across 9 states, 14 people, 1 handler, a foreign intelligence network that had been running inside the American defense sector, undetected, for 6 years. And 36 hours earlier, there had been a 37-megabyte file sitting in a server outbox in Cyprus. That file, if it had moved, would have put 3 American intelligence officers operating undercover in active threat environments directly in the crosshairs of a hostile foreign service. The estimated response window once received, 72 to 96 hours. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. This was not a hypothetical threat. It was not a training scenario. It was a fully operational, professionally constructed espionage network embedded inside some of the most sensitive defense contracting environments in the United States, recruited and run by an intelligence apparatus operating on behalf of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and Security. 14 assets, 9 employers, 23 documented intelligence transmissions spanning 5 years of undetected operation, and a final consolidated package scheduled to move within a 72-hour window that would have represented the single largest intelligence transfer the network had ever attempted to execute. Updated technical specifications for an active electronic warfare system that had taken 11 years and $4 billion to develop. A complete organizational chart of a classified joint intelligence task force. Then add real-time location data for 3 American intelligence personnel whose identities and operational cover had been carefully managed and protected at significant institutional cost. What made this moment critical was not just the scale of what was about to move. It was the timing. The window had been coordinated well in advance. The receiving infrastructure was already in position on the other end. The only question remaining was whether anyone on the American side could close that window before it opened. They had 36 hours to find out. The investigation did not begin with Iran. It rarely does. It began with a wire transfer. A mid-level systems analyst employed by a defense technology subcontractor in Northern Virginia had received, over approximately 18 months, a series of deposits totaling just over $240,000. The transfers arrived in fractured increments, never exceeding $9,900 in a single transaction. That ceiling was deliberate. Federal reporting requirements trigger automatic bank oversight at $10,000. Whoever structured these payments knew that threshold precisely, had engineered each transaction to remain just beneath it, and had done so consistently enough that the pattern itself became its own kind of signature. The funds traced back to a cluster of LLC accounts registered across Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming, 3 states with among the most permissive corporate registration environments in the country. None of these entities had observable business activity. None had filed corporate tax returns. All had been registered within the same 6-month window, approximately 2 years before the first transfer arrived. The architecture was clean, layered, designed to be boring enough that no single element would attract serious scrutiny on its own. The pattern surfaced in a batch of suspicious activity reports being reviewed by an FBI financial intelligence analyst assigned to a joint foreign influence task force. She flagged the subcontractor's name. It was not the first time she had seen it. A different employee at the same firm had appeared in an earlier unrelated review of travel records flagged by a Department of Homeland Security partner agency. The records involved repeated visits to a European country with documented connections to Iranian intelligence facilitation networks. 2 employees, same employer, different red flags, different timelines. She connected them in a single afternoon. Within days, a formal counterintelligence investigation had opened, eventually drawing 41 FBI special agents, 14 analysts, 6 technical surveillance specialists, and coordinating personnel from the NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General, and a classified unit within the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The first 90 days were spent entirely in observation. No arrests, no interviews, no warrants served. The priority was not disruption. It was understanding. Investigators needed to map not just who these individuals were, but how the network breathed, how communications moved, who controlled the structure from inside the United States, And critically, what material had already been compromised and transmitted. What they found, piece by piece, was something far larger than a financial crimes case. The analyst in Virginia was not working alone. Over the first 3 months of surveillance, 4 additional individuals emerged, employed across 3 separate defense sector organizations in Virginia, Maryland, and Texas, all in documented contact with the same handler. That handler had been operating inside the United States for 7 years on a legitimate long-term visa tied to a technology consulting business. His firm maintained offices in 2 states, held contracts with 3 private clients, none of which had government connections, none of whose work touched sensitive material. It was a perfectly constructed cover, patient, layered, built to absorb years of scrutiny without producing a single anomaly worth investigating. His communications ran through a combination of commercial VPN services, a custom-modified messaging application that NSA technical specialists would spend 3 weeks reverse engineering, and a system of coded language embedded within what appeared to be routine business correspondence. Financial coordination flowed through the layered LLC architecture, designed with sophisticated working knowledge of American financial reporting requirements. This was not improvised tradecraft. This was professional-grade intelligence infrastructure, built by people who had studied the system they were operating inside. By the end of the 4th month, the FBI's estimate had grown from 5 identified assets to 11. By the 6th month, 14 confirmed individuals and 3 additional suspects still under evaluation. Those 14 were distributed across 9 employers, all defense contractors or subcontractors operating within the Pentagon acquisition and technology development ecosystem. 2 held top-secret sensitive compartmented information clearances. 4 held standard top-secret clearances. The remaining 8 held secret-level access or worked in proximity to cleared personnel in ways that gave them reach to information flows exceeding their formal authorization. Several had served in the United States military before transitioning to the private sector. 2 held advanced engineering degrees directly relevant to the systems their employers were developing. 1 had spent 11 years inside a federal agency before moving to private industry. These were not cover identities assembled overnight. They were careers, built over years and decades, through background investigations, professional reviews, and accumulated institutional trust. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, brought in during the 5th month, conducted a comprehensive recruitment profile review across all 14 confirmed assets. The pattern it identified was consistent in every single case. Every individual had experienced a significant financial pressure event within 18 months of their first documented contact with network-connected entities. A divorce, a medical crisis, a failed investment, a period of unemployment, a legal matter. In each case, the initial approach had been indirect and professionally framed. A connection request, a conference introduction, a consulting opportunity. Nothing that would trigger a counterintelligence alarm in a person not already primed to detect one. The financial assistance followed, always structured to appear legitimate. Consulting fees, contract payments, referral bonuses routed through the LLC network. By the time any of these individuals could have clearly recognized the nature of what they had entered, they were already positioned where exposure would be professionally and legally catastrophic. At least 6 of the 14 had attempted at some point to reduce their participation. The handler's response in each case had been the same, a quiet, professional reminder of what the alternative looked like. The material that had passed through the network, according to FBI estimates developed with the NSA and Defense Intelligence Agency, encompassed technical specifications related to 2 active defense development programs, operational scheduling data connected to a classified overseas logistics framework, and personnel identifying information sufficient to enable the identification and targeting of American intelligence assets operating across the Middle East and Central Asia. The full damage assessment would eventually characterize this as one of the most significant espionage losses in the American defense technology sector in over a decade. But in the active phase of the investigation, the immediate crisis was the scheduled transfer. The 37-megabyte archive sitting in the Cyprus server outbox was not the complete package. It was the opening transmission of a coordinated, multi-part transfer scheduled to execute across a 72-hour window. The full consolidated product, based on the FBI's analysis of intercepted network traffic and decrypted handler communications, was destined for a receiving entity assessed with high confidence as an Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and Security Coordination node operating through a third-country intermediary. The receiving location was not in Tehran, it was in a European city with open commercial internet infrastructure and a busy international airport. The kind of place where a man with a laptop and a coffee can route a file to the other side of the world without attracting any attention at all. The window for prevention was closing. 36 hours. When FBI senior leadership, in consultation with the Director's Office and the National Security Division of the Department of Justice, made the decision to move from observation to intervention, it was not a clean choice. 6 months of disciplined intelligence collection had produced the most comprehensive network picture achievable without tipping the hand. But the scheduled transfer created a hard deadline that made further delay strategically indefensible. If the package moved, the damage was irreversible. The FBI's internal assessment of the timeline for hostile response, once the receiving entity had the material in hand, was 72 to 96 hours. The word used in internal communications, reviewed during subsequent congressional briefings to describe the potential outcome for the 3 personnel whose location data was in that final package, was not serious. It was not significant. It was catastrophic. The operation plan was finalized in 12 hours. Simultaneous coordination across 6 federal agencies, 4 regional FBI field offices, and a Department of Defense liaison channel. 14 arrest warrants, 9 search warrant packages covering physical locations and digital infrastructure, a coordinated technical operation to neutralize the outgoing transfer capability before the scheduled window opened. Any gap in timing, any premature signal reaching the handler, or any single asset risked an accelerated transfer, evidence destruction, or flight. The handler was the most critical variable. He was trained. He had operated for 6 years inside the United States without detection. Any unscheduled contact from assets, any deviation from established communication patterns would be read as a warning. Every element of the operation had to reach its execution point simultaneously. The tactical planning team chose a 4 a.m. operational window, an hour selected to minimize civilian exposure, maximize execution effectiveness, and reduce the probability of any target initiating an emergency communication before warrants were served. In the 48 hours before execution, surveillance on all 14 targets moved to continuous coverage posture. Then, at 2:17 in the morning on the day of the operation, one additional variable surfaced. One target had purchased a one-way airline ticket to Western Europe. That ticket was flagged. It accelerated the operational timeline by approximately 90 minutes. The team worked through the night. At 4:03, 14 individuals were taken into custody across 9 states within a 40-minute window. The handler was arrested at his residence, a modest townhouse in a northern Virginia suburb that, when searched, revealed a sophisticated technical infrastructure concealed behind what appeared to be an ordinary home office. Encrypted hard drives, a purpose-built communications device not commercially available in the United States. Physical documents relating to the financial network's architecture. And a pre-prepared package of materials assembled in the hours immediately preceding his arrest, containing items consistent with preparation for emergency departure. He had known something was coming. He had spent years developing the instincts required to recognize the texture of institutional attention. He had not known it was already standing outside his door at 4 a.m. The simultaneous technical operation targeting the Cyprus registered server succeeded. Coordinated through European law enforcement partners and executed at the precise moment the domestic arrests commenced, the server was taken offline. The scheduled transfer window never opened. The custom messaging application, the VPN routing architecture, the LLC financial network, servers across 4 countries, financial accounts in 7 jurisdictions, digital devices from 14 residential and commercial locations, all seized and preserved in a single morning. What 6 years had built was dismantled before sunrise. Federal charges were filed within 72 hours of the arrests: espionage violations, unauthorized transmission of national defense information, conspiracy, operating as an unregistered agent of a foreign government, identity document fraud. Legal proceedings extended approximately 22 months. All 14 assets entered guilty pleas or were convicted at trial. Sentences ranged from 7 years to life imprisonment. The most severe fell on the two individuals who held the highest clearances and transmitted the most sensitive categories of material. The handler received a sentence at the upper range of applicable federal guidelines. The 3 intelligence personnel whose location data had been the target of the final transfer remained safe. The operations that had been suspended following their extraction were eventually reconstituted under enhanced security protocols. The technical analysis of the custom communications application recovered from the handler's residence revealed it was not purpose-built for this specific network. It was a modified version of a broader platform that had appeared in fragments across 2 prior counterintelligence investigations that had never been successfully resolved. That connection allowed investigators to reconstruct elements of operations previously only partially understood, extending the impact of this case well beyond the 14 people arrested that morning. The Behavioral Analysis Unit's findings on recruitment methodology were immediately incorporated into updated counterintelligence awareness training distributed across the Department of Defense contractor community. The pattern, a financial pressure event followed by an indirect professional approach, followed by the gradual escalation of engagement before any overt intelligence request was ever made, was not unique to this network. Variants of it had appeared in prior foreign espionage investigations linked to multiple adversarial intelligence services. What made this particular operation exceptional was the patience and precision with which the methodology had been applied at scale, the systematic rigor with which the network had identified and characterized the specific vulnerability of each individual asset, and the operational discipline that had sustained undetected activity across 9 employers and 14 individuals over a 6-year period. That systematic quality was what most disturbed the investigators who spent the most time immersed in the evidence. This was not opportunistic. It was not reactive. It was a deliberate, long-term, well-resourced strategic effort to penetrate the American defense technology sector through its human layer, i.e. targeting not the systems themselves, but the people who worked with those systems, at precisely the moments when those people were most susceptible to incremental compromise that is genuinely difficult to detect until it is nearly too late. 6 years, 14 assets, 9 employers, 23 documented transmissions, and a final transfer 36 hours from execution. That would have been the largest single intelligence loss the entire operation had ever produced. In a different version of this timeline, the analyst who first flagged those wire transfers had been assigned to a different case file that week, or had been out of the office, or had looked at 2 names at the same company and simply not made the connection that afternoon. The way any person reviewing hundreds of names across dozens of documents on any given day could reasonably not make it. In that version, the window opens. The packages move. 3 American intelligence personnel have their real-time locations in hostile hands within hours. That outcome is not speculative. It is assessed. And the assessment, even in its unclassified form, does not require elaboration. The 36-hour margin between that outcome and the one that actually happened was not luck. It was 6 months of patient, disciplined, methodical work. It was an analyst on an ordinary afternoon asking why 2 names at the same company kept appearing in unrelated files. It was a team choosing observation over the institutional pressure to move before the full picture was visible. It was 3 weeks of technical specialists reverse engineering a communications application so its contents could be read, rather than merely detected. Espionage of this kind does not announce itself. It grows quietly inside the ordinary texture of professional life, exploiting the ordinary vulnerabilities of ordinary people at their most exposed moments. The defense against it is not spectacular. It is methodical. It is the willingness to follow a thread before anyone is certain where it leads. The transfer never happened. The network was gone by morning. And somewhere, in an undisclosed location, an intelligence operation that was 36 hours from destruction is still running. Because someone looked at two names on an ordinary afternoon and asked the right question.